And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Hello, everyone. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. And in the weather-related headlines in today's video, we are looking at a Bering Sea low and front pushing inland tonight along areas of the southwest coast up through the Seward Peninsula, and that will continue eastward with moisture pushing into the interior as we go through Wednesday and into Thursday. So there is going to be some midweek accumulating snow in the Alaska range and into the White Mountains, especially north and east of Fairbanks. So the snow in the Alaska range will be light to moderate, but up in the White Mountains, some moderate to locally heavier snow could fall. I'll give you the details in a moment. And then there's going to be a stronger low pressure system that's wet, windy, and mild coming in off the Bering Sea this weekend, pushing across the Aleutians and the lower Alaska Peninsula and then up along the west coast. So this system will bring more in the way of wind and rain than snow. And then we've had a pretty decent display of the Aurora last night. Around midnight, they were very visible across much of the state, including even with the city lights of Anchorage. And in part, this particular display was due to the Russell-McFerrin effect, and that's because at this time of year, near the equinoxes in the fall and spring, you have the tilt of the Earth's axis during the equinox time frame in the fall and spring. It's more favorable to kind of capture just the general solar wind, so you don't even need a big coronal mass ejection to spark a pretty effective aurora display. And here is a case in point where we did have a little stronger solar wind and some charged particles, and it peaked out last night around midnight. That's Monday night. And then it hasn't fallen off entirely. We're still in kind of a minor to moderate geomagnetic storm still ongoing through the daylight hours of this Tuesday. So it's possible yet tonight, if you have clear skies, there could be at least some active aurora visible, especially away from city lights or as you get out into the more remote, dark locations. But something to keep an eye on. And taking a look at what we have coming in along the west coast, the lower Yukon coastline, we're getting some breezy conditions with light rain and fog, 46 degrees there at Hooper Bay. Further east, Isabel Pass is partly cloudy, 32, and you can see the snowfall along areas there of the Alaska Range through the pass. This same location will probably be picking up about 3 to 6 inches of snow as we go through Wednesday afternoon into Thursday night, as the same system currently now working its way into the west will continue eastward. So the Fairbanks Weather Service office put out a couple of special weather statements for the midweek period, the Alaska Range and for the White Mountains, especially north and east of Fairbanks. First of all, as this front works its way east, it's going to also pull up some moisture from the Gulf. So the Alaska Range will be getting in on some snow starting Wednesday, and especially as we get into the afternoon, evening hours, continuing into Thursday. And that'll spread further northward up along the White Mountains for later Wednesday, especially Wednesday evening through Thursday night. So the Alaska Range could pick up 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. Areas a little lower elevation like Cantwell, maybe 1 to 3 inches of snow. Areas above Fairbanks, especially there in the higher hills and the White Mountains, could see as much as 5 to 9 inches of snow by the time things taper off late Thursday night into early Friday morning. And on the weather map, or I should say the satellite imagery on this Tuesday afternoon, we have a pretty strong low south of Haida Gwaii and southwest of Vancouver Island. The main impact of this low is going to stay primarily south of the Panhandle, which is getting in on some of the clouds and even a few showers now. But this energy is going to be heading more eastward and away from the state. Meanwhile, we have a low along the Kamchatka Peninsula that's going to stay just outside the Gulf of Anadyr and scoot across around St. Lawrence Island and then into eastern Norton Sound by Thursday. This front out ahead of it is going to push eastward, and that's what's going to allow that moisture to continue into the interior. Meanwhile, there's going to be a secondary low try to form Cook Inlet on up toward Prince William Sound as the front slowly works its way eastward as we get into later Wednesday and Thursday morning. Meanwhile, frontal system leg kind of curls back to south of the Aleutian chain, and that's where yet another low is going to come up out of. And the low that comes up over the weekend will be a bit stronger. It's going to have a central pressure just above 970 millibars with a pretty good surge of warm, moist air and windy conditions around it. So for tonight, late into early Wednesday morning, we have the low approaching St. Lawrence Island with the occluded front pushing inland across the southwest interior and into the west. There's another weaker low south of the Aleutian chain, and then the one I spoke of that is south of Haida Gwaii off toward Vancouver Island. That's going to remain more south than coming back to the north and west like these lows sometimes do. We have a ridge of high pressure in between from south of the Gulf up into northwest Canada. Clouds will be on the increase here across the central interior tonight, and by Wednesday afternoon, there's going to be snow falling in the higher elevations, especially of the Alaska Range, with accumulations starting to occur. Best chance coming Friday night into Thursday, and this front will continue eastward. That's what will get the White Mountains, especially Wednesday night into Thursday night, with several inches of snow possible again there above Fairbanks. And then the low that's out here just outside of Norton Sound Wednesday afternoon will continue slowly eastward for the day Thursday. And then here's what's left, the secondary low that kind of forms up in the northwest corner of the Gulf on Thursday afternoon with a trailing front down through the Gulf into the North Pacific. But here comes the hints of the next system. This is going to be a stronger, windy, milder, wet low pressure system that's going to work its way across the Bering Sea this weekend and pushing windy conditions with moisture more in the form of rain along areas of the west and southwest coast. So by Friday afternoon, we have the one low and trough weakening out over the Panhandle back up into the northern Gulf Coast, southeast interior up through the lower Copper River Basin. Meanwhile, there's going to be the stronger low beginning to cross the Aleutians Friday afternoon, and that low will emerge into the Bering Sea. And it's going to deepen. It'll deepen to just above 970 millibars Saturday into Sunday, and that's going to spread wind and mainly rain along, especially the southwest coast, Alaska Peninsula, into the Aleutians here for Friday into Saturday. So looking at temperatures, we do have some colder readings up here along the Brooks Range, getting down into the 10-15 degree range. Could even be some isolated single digits. Lows in the 40s, most of the Panhandle along the western Gulf Coast, and milder temperatures because of that southerly mild flow of air coming up in off the North Pacific. We have lows mid-upper 40s along Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, and down here along the Aleutians in through the Alaska Peninsula. In fact, the other day on Monday, Atka had a high of 65 degrees. Yeah, quite mild. And that warmer air is pushing eastward. For the day Wednesday, we do find some temperatures in the 50s along the Alaska Peninsula up into, say, Kodiak City. And out there, Homer could be around 51, 52 degrees. There could be a 60-degree reading or so. 62, the forecast high for Craig, Klawock, in that region. Back to the north, colder across the Brooks Range North Slope. Temperatures stay below freezing there. And as the moisture comes eastward, it runs into the Alaska Range and the White Mountains. We're going to see that wet snow beginning to develop and start to accumulate for Wednesday night, especially into Thursday. Lows in the teens along the Brooks Range, Arctic Village, and Atuvik Pass for Thursday morning in the 20s, low mid-20s for lows along the Arctic coast. We have temperatures still above freezing through the Kuskokwim River Valley and up into the lower Yukon simply because of cloud cover and that southwesterly flow of the behind the front kind of bringing in that milder air off of the Bering Sea. And I should note, maybe tomorrow I'll show the water temperatures, the sea surface temperatures south of the Aleutians down here in the mid-latitudes of the North Pacific are above normal. So this is going to have a tendency to provide any fall storms with more energy, more moisture to work with, more heat energy. So that is something keeping an eye on as we tend to step towards some stronger systems in mid to late fall. And then as we get into Thursday afternoon, highs could still flirt with 60, Prince of Wales Island over toward Ketchikan. Otherwise 50-ish up toward Juneau and Skagway. Still some near 50-degree readings from Anchorage down through Homer. 58 there at Kodiak City, trying to flirt with 60. And otherwise we have readings along the lower middle Yukon, generally in the 40s for highs on Thursday, and generally below freezing along the Brooks Range and near freezing there along the Arctic coast. So the temperature outlook for October 6th through the 10th, even though we did see some cooler air to end the month of September especially across the northern western mainland. We're seeing a trend trying to get temperatures a bit above normal here across much of the state, especially southern half of the mainland, northern panhandle, October 6th through the 10th. And then here's what's more interesting, quite wet and likely that this will be snow and rain depending on the nature of the front and elevation of where the precipitation falls. But the system coming up this weekend, the one that's going to be coming across the Bering, is the first, and maybe a couple others coming in this time frame. But that's going to be one of the primary impetus for this above normal precipitation along the west into the central interior as we go through October 6th and the 10th.